Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Matt Widener, and I'm a cyber engineer with Red Sky Alliance. Today's threat brief contains information gathered from open source and WAPAC Labs collections over the last week. Next slide, please. For the agenda today, we're going to briefly discuss recent reporting for the recently passed UN cybercrime resolution. For open source and social media, we'll cover recent data breaches and cyber attacks and vulnerabilities, and then we'll go over 7 days of trending, including the latest APT activities, cloud security, blacklists, and keylogger activity. Next slide. Last week, our Chinese and Russian subject matter expert, codenamed Silkworm, published a report regarding a recently passed United Nations cybercrime resolution. The resolution creates an ad hoc intergovernmental committee to create a comprehensive international convention to counter the use of information and communications technologies for criminal purposes. Russia proposed and China supported the resolution that is seen by human rights groups as a move to legitimize internet censorship and criminalize the expression of opinions critical of their respective governments. Through its sovereign internet law, Russia has taken steps to decouple its national internet infrastructure from the global internet. This provides the country the capability to totally disconnect itself from the rest of the world, quote, in an emergency. The law also criminalizes disrespect for authorities and state symbols and provides a legal basis for mass surveillance and the restriction of free expression. China has taken similar steps to control the internet inside its borders, with cyber laws controlling data collection and processing by foreign companies operating in China, and outside its borders with cyber attacks on sites deemed a threat to Chinese government control. The creation of a committee to evaluate cybercrime by these two states is concerning in that it is poised to create international treaties favorable to these oppressive regimes that could force their interpretation of internet crime on other countries. For more details, you can find the full report at redskyalliance.org. Next slide. In the news this week, Microsoft announced two critical vulnerabilities. CVE 2020-061 was brought to Microsoft's attention by the NSA, and a patch was issued January 14th. The vulnerability allows an attacker to spoof code signing certificates. These certificates are used by the Windows operating system to determine if an executable program is from a legitimate and trusted source. Using a spoof certificate, an attacker could make their malware appear to be from a trusted, legitimate source, and in some cases bypass antivirus software protections. On January 16th, just 2 days after the patch was released, Red Sky Alliance analysts discovered samples were already being uploaded to VirusTotal and identified as containing an exploit for this vulnerability. Recommended action is to deploy the patch for this vulnerability as soon as possible. CVE 20-0674 was also awarded to Microsoft for a vulnerability affecting Internet Explorer browser versions 9, 10, and 11. The flaw exploits a memory corruption issue in the browser's JavaScript engine, jscript.dll, allowing an attacker to run arbitrary code with the same permissions as the currently logged in user. If that user is an administrator, the malware could gain total control of the system. No interaction is required by the user for the exploit to be triggered, simply visiting a malicious website. Links delivered through malware or document attachments could be used to deliver the link to a victim. The exploit has been seen in targeted attacks in the wild and attributed to the Chinese APT known as Dark Hotel. While Microsoft has published a workaround for the issue, the security patch is not planned for release until the February patch cycle. ZDNet reported a hacker has published credentials for over 500,000 IoT devices that were accumulated over an unknown period of time. The hacker, who runs a DDoS service, maintained the device list to perform those kinds of attacks for paying customers. The list was compiled by scanning the internet for devices running the Telnet remote access service, and then using a list of known default credentials and a custom word list, a brute force attack was used to discover access credentials. The list is from late 2019 and could contain stale data, but could also be used by an attacker as a starting point to generate a new up-to-date list. Recommended action is to audit for devices running the insecure telnet service and disable it and upgrade to SSH, the Secure Shell Remote Access Service that uses asymmetric keys for authentication. If that upgrade is not possible, change default credentials to use strong passwords. Citrix released the first of several patches remediating CVE 2019-19781, a critical vulnerability in the Citrix Application Delivery Controller and Citrix Gateway products. The vulnerability allows an attacker to achieve remote code execution to install malware or perform other actions on target. After a proof of concept exploit was published earlier this month, active attacks were detected in the wild attempting to exploit this vulnerability. Estimates of vulnerable systems is in the tens of thousands worldwide across all industries. Recommended action is to install all available patches from Citrix impacting this vulnerability as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Last week, we recorded approximately 1.3 million indicators categorized as shown here. These collections included our threat recon, keylogger, malicious emails, and sinkhole traffic. The numbers on this slide show the indicators in the respective collections. Indicators are available to paid Red Sky Alliance members weekly, as well as our blacklists, which come in CSV, FortiSIM, and Proofpoint formats. These are the APT botnet indicators collected in the last week. We observed 216 new indicators over the past 7 days. This is 80 more than we observed last week. You can use your two-factor authentication to log into CTAC to download the APT indicators listed here today. Please contact us on Slack or via email for any assistance. On the right, you can see our top sinkhole statistics sorted by malware. Next slide, please. For APT indicators this week, we again see SickyPot and Maudi topping the list. Tab C Teng and DNS Calc have slipped below the chart threshold to numbers 8 and 9. They were replaced by two Chinese APT malware strains, Mirage and Binanen in 3rd and 4th place, with Carbonac showing up at number 5. Next slide. We've done a bit of tweaking on how this pie chart is created, so it will look a little bit different than last week. On the left, we find the top 10 worst botnet ASNs as reported by Spamhaus. And on the right, we find the top 10 botnet ASNs from our sinkhole data collection. Spamhaus reports number 31 Jinrong Street at the top of their list, whereas we rank Telecom Egypt as number 1, with 31 Jinrong Street at number 2. Additionally, Bharti Airtel holds the number 9 position in our data, whereas Spamhaus reports them at number 2. Although the rankings may differ, there is a 70% overlap between our data and the open source. ASNs that appear in our data that do not appear in the open source are Reliance Geo Infocom at number 3, Ros Telecom at number 7, and Office National des Postes at Telecommunications in Morocco at number 10. That last item is not labeled on our pie chart there, but it is represented by the green slice. Next slide. On the cloud security front, we are seeing botnet activities in the same cloud environments as usual. The top 3 remain unchanged. However, GoDaddy and Alibaba have exchanged places, with GoDaddy now at number 4. Overall high-risk environments include SharkTech and Hurricane Electric. TierPoint and Rackspace are caution risk environments this week, with ONR at a lower risk. Next slide. In the Red Sky Alliance malicious email collection, we see more phishing emails masquerading as invoices and purchase orders. We again see Kate Ellen at thinkglobal.net.cn and Andrea at gapro.ch, but delivering different malware and with different targeting than we saw last week. Recipients at electroputer.ro and thinkglobal.net.cn are being targeted with the Windows injector malware using the subject line January purchase order, while Andrea at gapro.ch is now delivering the Whack Attack Trojan to unknown recipients. The malicious email using the subject line revised invoice for lashing MVRTE5T Thorco attempts to impersonate a maritime shipping vessel named RTE5T and was one of the subjects in a recent maritime vessel impersonation report on redskyalliance.org. Next slide, please. Our blacklists are published weekly. On the right side, you can see some of our keylogger stats. Last week, we observed 51,201 sinkhole connections from new unique IP addresses, 21 unique email accounts compromised with keyloggers. Please go to redskyalliance.org to inquire for additional support, complete blacklists, red X-ray, and API access. Next slide, please. And that that concludes this week's brief. Please visit our Red Sky Alliance portal at https://redskyalliance.org for additional cyber intelligence reporting. If you have any questions regarding the topics briefed today, please contact Jay McKee at wapaclabs.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.